Struggling. I believe on that.
There we go. Got it. Cool. Make sure I've let everyone in. Well, thanks guys for all joining. This is sort of, well, welcome to the growth mindset series. I should start off with that. First of many episodes, I hope to do a little bit of a hybrid workshop / episode, podcast, whatever we want to call it. I'm a big believer in community, so I love having a bit more of an interactive situation. But the future, we don't really know how this is all going to look. I'll just pop a couple of people on mute. So yeah, please pop your microphones on mute when you're hopping on. Thank you. I'm also a big believer in always wanting to be a student, and learning from literally anyone and everyone is really, really important, which is why the Growth Mindset series is a space for us to learn, to listen to other people's guidance through the art of conversation and connection. So in the future, I do want to get more guests to come on to have a bit more of an interview process on different topics around health, wellness, and just fitness. Yeah, just to help us all really step into our growing mindsets. And so welcome to Kai. Not going to lie, when I was making that reel today and having to read over all the scientific words in terms of what you're qualified in, it was just giving me a massive tongue tie. So I'm going to let you just kind of give a bit of a spiel, tell everyone who you are, what you're about, what you do for work, and yeah, just give us a bit of an idea on who Kai is. Oh, I think you might be on.
You muted me. Okay.
Sorry. There we go.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kai Allison. I run Kinetics by Kai, which is an online coaching business primarily focused on nutrition coaching for my clients. I have a background in microbiology, so I have 2 degrees, and I'm currently doing a PhD in microbiology. And one section of my PhD focuses on antibiotics, but the other section focuses a little bit on the gut microbiome and how especially viruses in the gut microbiome affect our overall diverse abundance of microbes in our gut, and how that affects other things in our body, as well as how antibiotics interact with the gut. So that's a little bit about me.
That's full on. So how long have you been studying for?
Well, I started at 18 and I'm 24 and I haven't stopped.
Oh, wow. So it's like year after year.
Yeah, so I've got bachelor's degree, honors, and then I'm a year and a bit into my PhD, but I've just put that on pause to keep going with my online coaching business, and I'll probably come back to it. I've got an overheated camera happening. And we can't hear her. Oh no, there we go. Is that better?
You got me?
Yeah, you're back. You're all good.
All right. Love that. When you want to be all professional, it all goes to crap in the first 5 minutes. But I wouldn't be Joe if that's.
I think the mic has gone again, if that's. Anyway, while she's fixing that, we're just going to be going through a few questions today. We've had a few questions come in, and I feel like we have a few frequently asked questions about gut health. I get a lot all the time. Greens powders, are they worth it? Bloating, how much is normal? What else have we got? A lot about alcohol, how alcohol affects the gut. Is there a safe amount of alcohol?
And I'm back.
Yeah, you're back. You're all good.
Sorry, guys. What I was saying is literally, of course, something happens and I get kicked off, but I'm back. Yeah. So sorry, Kai, to cut you off, but as you were saying, we did get a fair few questions because I think gut health in general is just such a hot topic. And it was, I think during COVID, it really was a big thing because probably everyone was just at their homes in one room for a very long time. So yeah, I think that was sort of when it all started to trend, I reckon.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's one of those things where a lot of people suffer with some sort of gastrointestinal upset or some sort of symptoms at some point or regularly, and there isn't necessarily a quick fix for it like there is with a lot of other things. Like you got a headache, you take a Panadol, but it's not really the same necessarily for when you're bloated or constipated. Like there are, you know, certain things, but it's not like you can fix everything really quickly.
Yeah, no, that's so true. So one of the ones that you did touch base on just before is bloating normal? And this is something that I wanted to ask for myself because, like, for me, I feel like it's normal, but what would you say? Is bloating normal?
Bloating is, I think I'd describe it as common. Like a lot of people experience it pretty often. When it's not normal is when it's really common. So if you're experiencing it like multiple days of the week for extended periods of time, that can be not normal and a sign of something else. But for example, if you've just come out of prep, for example, and you've just had a massive meal, or you've gone from eating what you usually eat to something different, or you've just gone out for fast food and just eaten a heap of macas, then being bloated is quite normal. There are a lot of foods also that can just cause bloating just because of the type of food they are and what they include. So for example, if you have one thing I found actually really bloated me up, which I was surprised, was smoothies. So I used to have smoothies with lots of banana and mango, but apparently I saw someone online, but they were a doctor, talk about how that can be a common cause of bloating. Also things like chewing gum can cause bloating, or if you're eating too quickly as well. And sometimes it is just like a food intolerance, but I think it's pretty common to experience somewhat regularly, but it's when it's causing a bit of like a upset to your day-to-day life, and when it's really common. So if you're having it, as I said, multiple times a week, then maybe it's time to look into, actually maybe I'm intolerant to something I'm eating, or something else is wrong.
And I think as well, like, and that's a very good point that you made at the start of that, is just food volume. Like for me, coming out of prep, when I was eating so little calories to all of a sudden nearly doubling my calories over a couple of weeks to months time, like just the volume of food that I was actually having to digest. I felt more uncomfortable and I felt like I was more bloated, but that probably wasn't a bad thing.
I think some people get a little bit mixed up with, and I've had a few clients come to me and talk about bloating, and I'm like, okay, what exactly do you feel? Because sometimes people just confuse having a really full stomach, like having just overeaten or had a really big meal with a lot of food volume, with being bloated, whereas bloated is having that. There's no like clear definition. I looked, but it's just having that gas build up in your stomach / gastrointestinal system that you can feel, and it's uncomfortable. Whereas if you have a big meal and immediately after you can feel it on your stomach, usually that's just that excess food volume that you're not used to, which does cause discomfort, but it's not necessarily bloating.
Yeah. No, that's really good, because I think that's another, a very common point is just some people just, they eat and then they think that that's a bit of a flare up. Or it could just be like you're literally just digesting food.
Exactly.
So what is bad gut health? I know we'll touch base on gut health in general, but what would you say would pinpoint bad gut health?
It's a hard one to define, because it's another one where there's no clear definition, but I guess you could define gut health as having commonly, like often struggling with a lot of gastrointestinal upset. So if you're really often having diarrhea, constipation, bloating, any sort of gastrointestinal discomfort, feeling like you're not digesting, absorbing the food properly, can sort of be a way to describe bad gut health. So if you're really feeling like all the time you're thinking about your gut because you can't poop, or you're pooping too much, or you're really bloated after everything and you feel like you've tried a few things, then that can definitely be a sign of bad gut health. And then on the other hand, good gut health is just feeling like, you might sometimes be experiencing those symptoms, but most of the time you're pretty good. And you don't feel like you're having any issues with absorbing foods, and you feel like you have a balanced diet. That's usually a telltale sign of good gut health as well.
What would you say the worst thing someone can do that impacts their gut health? Like if you had to say one
thing.
We're probably going to talk about more stuff that, but just
I'll say two. Well, I guess they're kind of intertwined. It's getting sick, getting food poisoning. So if you go overseas and you get food poisoning, if you get barley belly, if you get any sort of traveler's diarrhea, obviously takes quite a toll on your gut. And then that's sort of backed up by the fact that often you use antibiotics to treat the infections. Because I study antibiotics, one of the things that's not great about them is they just sort of, most of them just kill everything. So they kill the good and the bad. So you've just gone from having a massive flare up from being sick, so your whole gastrointestinal system is out of whack, and then you're taking antibiotics and killing every good bacteria that was fighting for its life in there. So that's the worst thing you can do for your gut. It's a little bit of a hard thing to avoid sometimes. I think that's part of why I really promote, I'm a little bit anal about my food safety standards, so to speak, because that really is one of the worst things that can happen to your gut.
So what would the time frame be of recovery if it was like a normal case food poisoning for you to get back into a decent, a healthy gut?
I think it really does depend on the severity of it, and how long until you're really free of symptoms, and how long it takes for the gut microbiome to replenish and everything. And also especially what you're eating as well. If you go straight back to, I don't know, dieting again and you're not eating a good variety of nutrients, that can be hard. So it's really hard to tell, but I'd say a few months probably for your gut to restore, going back to what you were used to having before.
Yeah, still a decent period of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And does a lot of the questions that we were getting asked as well were the gut and its connection to our mind. So a lot of things have been going on social media of how the gut interacts with our mental health. So depression, anxiety, mood swings, all of that sort of stuff. But I hear a lot of the other way around. So I hear, like, you know, gut issues cause mental health issues, but I also hear mental health issues cause gut issues. And I feel like it's not that black and white. It's probably a little bit more like much of a muchness.
It's one of those things where the whole gut health thing, part of the reason I feel like it is blown out of proportion is we don't know a lot. It's like the brain. I feel like we don't know as much as we should about something that's in our body. But there were a few research papers that did look into the gut-brain axis. And so it's an axis. So it goes both ways, right? So as you said, the gut affects your mental health and your mental health affects your gut. And as far as how your gut affects your mental health, like that way, is a little bit harder to explain, and there's a lot of research that still needs to be done in it. But I think the easier one to explain would be how your mental health affects your gut. So if you're like me and you have autism and you have really sensory diversions to certain foods, or if you have ARFID, I think it's called, where you don't want to eat, like you're really strict with, you only eat a very select small amount of foods. If you're like me, you don't like vegetables that much and you have to really make the effort, that can affect your gut health, obviously. Or if you are depressed or anxious and you just don't have an appetite, it can happen where, you know, you're just not eating a lot, you're not getting a good diversity of fruit and vegetables because you don't feel like you don't have the energy. And also if you have any sort of like emotional dysregulation or eating disorder, obviously that very much affects the gut. If you've got a binge eating disorder, any sort of eating disorder really will affect your gut, as well as any sort of long-term dieting. So you can really, I feel like it's easy to translate how it goes from how your mental health affects your gut rather than how your gut affects the mental health, because it really does go both ways. So it's important to look after both. Is
it a hormonal thing as well, do you think, like in terms of gut health affecting mental health? How much does what our guts, like whether it's good, whether they're healthy or not healthy, does that cause hormonal imbalances at all? Or would it be that sort of other way around?
It's one of those things where it might be the other way around, but there's a lot of research that still needs to be done to sort of establish things. Like from what I've read, there's more of those things where it concludes this may have a relation with your hormones, but we need more. We need more research to sort of find out how and why. Because when you think about it, a lot of studies are done in rats and mice first, and then they've got to move on to humans and clinical trials and everything, and it takes a long time. And I feel like it's mostly been the last 20 years in terms of research that the whole gut microbiome stuff has really boomed, especially in the last decade, really. So it takes a long time, the longer than we want to get that off the ground running, getting funded, and looking into things more and how we actually know how they affect our hormones, how our hormones affect our gut, etc.
And then there's the whole conversation of like you said, it's going to animals, rats, and then to humans. It's probably going to go to men first and then females.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we're all a whole different ball game.
Yeah, and they'll obviously do it in healthier humans first that don't have any mental health issues, blah, blah, blah. It's like such a
it's a slow progress. But I guess it's like we look at, like you said, the last decade and how much research and actual things are getting are happening. So we've come a long way.
Yeah, for sure.
And now it's not just, it's now oversaturated. And
yeah.
I think we all can feel, whoever's on the call today can all feel like social media at the moment. It's like, you can't do something, you have to do this, that is bad for you, you don't like it. It's just so conflicting. And this is why I really love these ideas of conversations. It's, okay, what are the facts? Like, what should we be listening to? And that's another question that I personally have is, in the world of social media and in the world of everyone has some sort of hat on, how would you recommend deciphering the bullshit from the truth? Like, do you look at credentials? Do you look at, like, for yourself, and where you come from is very academic. So like, how do you decipher bullshit from the truth?
It can be hard. It's increasingly harder on social media to sort of decipher that. Like, I looked up gut health just in the Explore tab on Instagram the other day. I just sort of went through and I figured out, and I felt like most of it was either just bullshit, people putting out content when they don't really know what they're talking about, et cetera, et cetera. So it's really hard. And my best tip for anything really on social media is not just blindly follow someone, even if you just really enjoyed their content, but like, if it's coming to somewhere you want to get education from, which Instagram is great for. There's so many people I follow that post great educational content, dietitians, sports physicians, all that kind of stuff. But when it comes down to it, I think checking their bio is usually the way to go. With gut health, at least, you want to be looking at dietitians, scientists, researchers who specialize in it is usually, or even, sports nutritionists like myself, but background in science can be helpful. I find that a red flag, and it's not all the time, but a lot of the time, if they have holistic or naturopath in their bio, usually they're just taking advantage of this thing that is gut health at the moment. And naturopaths don't get a lot of training in microbiology, and I've just found so many posts on Instagram that are just straight up false. I'll ask for references, I'll get nothing in return. So it's one of those things where it's become a trend, and then you have people sort of jumping on it, but they don't exactly know what they're talking about, or they've just copy pasted what somebody else has posted. But it can also be hard because what someone puts in their bio isn't always what it is. Like, I found a lot of accredited sports nutritionists will not, because they've put it in their bio, but they're not. They've just put that there. So to make themselves sound like they might be a little bit more qualified. But I think dietitians, obviously pretty reliable people. Anyone who sort of has a background in science can be really helpful as well. I think it just comes down to, if it's someone who, it can be really hard to tell, who, especially in the days of ChatGPT and people being able to make content.
AI,
it is really hard to decipher. I think it's just about going with your gut. Seeing if someone's, having a look at their bio, like, oh, do they seem like they know what they're talking about? I think that's the way to go.
And like, message them, like what you said, like, even I think something that I really appreciated is I've had many messages, like, people asking me my qualifications and if I was qualified in a certain area, and if I'm not, I will refer you out. Like, I will someone like that might be more qualified than I am in a certain area. Unfortunately, like, even before we jumped on the call, Kai and I were talking about, sometimes people are just client hungry, or just, a little bit more wanting to gain traction and followers and stuff like that, so they will tell people what they want to hear. And that brings me into naturopaths, and I have lots of friends that are naturopaths, so I don't want to absolutely sting them to the ground. But there is a common trend when it comes to naturopaths of getting people to do certain tests and stuff like that. I don't really want to dive too much into naturopath as such, but in terms of the testing that gets done, whether it's a stool test, or even you'd probably know the actual wording for it. Is there a label?
I don't, because I don't think it's real. So pretty much the at-home stool test is something that a lot of people do, but the issue is a lot of these are just third-party industries. They're not necessarily people who know what they're looking for in the stool. So a big problem is a lot of things like SIBO can't actually be identified through the stool. They're identified through breath tests. A lot of things can only be identified if you like go under and they do an endoscopy and everything like that. Not a whole lot can be told from your stool. But that being said, my issue with the at-home stool test is that the company that provides it gives you you get like something in return that shows you, oh, you have overgrowth of this bacteria and this bacteria, you don't have enough this bacteria, and they'll sort of have a marker of what's okay and what's like too much or too little. And the issue with that is they determine what's good and what's bad. They determine what's too little and too much. And the issue with that is that a lot of us in the industry of microbiology know that there is actually no definition or exact number or certain microbes that are necessarily good or bad. Like staph, for example, Staph aureus, which is golden staph or MRSA that you may have heard of, common in hospitals, people who get infections in hospitals. It's pretty bad. It's very antibiotic resistant. But the truth is there are so many different strains and species of staph that a lot of us, I think it's like 1 in 5 people have it up their nose right now. So maybe 1 or 2 of us in this call will have it in our nose right now.
I reckon
is it's all over our skin. It's actually pretty common at gyms as well. It's important to wipe down your jeans. But I think the point is that there is no definition of what is a healthy gut microbiome. So you could have 2 people who have perfectly healthy gut microbiomes and they are totally different. And we obviously know that there are really good gut microbes like lactobacillus, which is in yogurt. And then we know there's helicobacter, which is a very like H. pylori, I think everyone knows it as, is a really bad bacteria. But the truth is the actual ratio of what's good and what's bad can't be told by a company that makes these tests, because the science,
not so black and white.
The researchers don't know. So they sort of set a standard of this is okay and this isn't, and we can't really determine that, and you can't determine it from like a one-off stool test either. So they're just not very accurate, and I think it's just a way to sort of get on, you know, the whole gut health thing, but they're not very accurate, unfortunately.
So diving straight into gut microbiome, how much in terms of just like the general population, how much do you think we should know about our gut microbiome?
I think at the end of the day, it just comes down to the basics when it comes to looking after it. Like, I think most people know about probiotics. They're good for the gut. Like, don't drink too much alcohol, don't do drugs like really often and all that. But I feel like it really does come down to the basics of just treat your body with respect. And if you're not having any gastrointestinal symptoms, you shouldn't have to worry too much. But I don't feel like the general public doesn't need to know everything unless they are really struggling with gut health issues. But I feel like it just comes down to being able to decipher on social media what is and isn't true.
So if we wanted to break down a little bit, go a little bit more in depth in terms of our gut microbiome, where would we start? Like, is it important for us to understand more the terminology behind it, or even just like looking at our environmental factors or like our lifestyle factors and going down that road before we enter a bit more of that scientific side of things?
I think like the first thing I do with clients, if they're like, oh, I've had like my gut doesn't feel great today or whatever, the first thing I do is I look at their fiber. That is the number one thing I tend to look at with people when they say, oh, my gut doesn't feel good, like I'm not regular, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what's your fiber like? And they say, I don't know what fiber. I've had people say, I don't know what fiber is. So I explain that to them, and you know, anyone who tracks through MyFitnessPal or anything, you can sort of figure out your fiber. And then there's soluble and insoluble fiber, which both have a difference. But fiber is the number one thing that I feel like people, like, we know it's important, but people will forget about it, and they don't understand how big of an importance it plays in our gastrointestinal health and our health in general. So I think that really is the first thing I go to. If people are drinking every weekend, like drinking, you know, more than 10 standard drinks a week, that's one of those things where, well, if you keep drinking, you're probably just going to continue to have a bit of an upset gut. And I guess another factor would be I feel like those are the main two ones. Antibiotic use as well isn't great for your gut. So if you've had a lot of infections in your lifetime, you've gone on a lot of antibiotics, that can deplete it. But if you've got an infection, then you kind of got to take the antibiotics. It's a bit of a hard one. But I'd say fiber is the one thing people should really focus on if they've felt like they've got bad gut health. It's the first thing you should look at is fiber, and just having a variety in your diet as well.
That's what I was going to touch base on is it a certain type of fiber, or is it just literally just trying to get as much different types of fruits and veg, and even like I even read something on like herbs and spices, like things like that.
I think most, like when it comes to fiber, you have to be getting a certain amount of soluble and a certain amount of insoluble fiber. It's funny because I'm actually working on a post about that at the moment. They both have benefits in bulking up your stool and lowering cholesterol and just helping with the general gut health. But you don't need to stress too much about the types of fiber. I think one thing is that you're relatively consistent with your fiber. So if you go from really low to really high fiber, so if you're someone who you increase your carbs by like 100 or something, or 50 overnight, and you've thereby increased your fiber, especially if you eat a lot of whole foods, you're gonna have gastrointestinal upset. And that's what a lot of athletes struggle with too. So I don't recommend actually having fiber before you work out, because it sort of does sit in your stomach. Like, it's great. It's not great to have around working out. But I think just getting a decent amount every day, building up to it, and then sort of relatively being consistent with how much you're getting every day is really important and very underrated in terms of gut health. Like, greens powders are not gonna they're not gonna outrun a bad diet.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Greens powders are not going to outrun a bad diet.
Yeah.
That on a poster. Yeah, I think that's some really, really good points there. With greens powders, do they have any place in someone's diet? Like, where would you add that in if you had to for a client, or if you were going to for a client?
I just personally wouldn't. I just kind of think, just for me, I just don't think they're worth the money. If you're someone who has a very limited restrictive diet and you just opposed to eating all fruits and vegetables, maybe, but I'd probably look into other things first. But I do kind of just think they're just a marketing thing. They're just a way to, and they're very common at the moment. I feel like they're one of those things I see on Instagram every day, is someone's promoting a green supplement. But the truth is, like, the idea is that they're supposed to replace greens, but when it comes to supplements, you obviously always want to get as much as you can from your food first, and then if you need to supplement, you supplement. But greens powders, even, like, for most people, I'd actually rather they take something like Metamucil and get like a little bit more fiber out of it, so to speak, because greens powders are more there to sort of replenish a little bit of the vitamins and minerals. So I'd probably rather someone take a multivitamin and Metamucil, because it also tastes better than the greens powders. But I do just think they're expensive for what they are and what they actually provide. And, there's no studies being like, wow, greens powders do this, that, and the other, whereas there's thousands of studies saying, talking about fiber and talking about the benefits of actually eating whole foods with the fiber in it, and the volume and everything that comes with that as well.
That's very true. I think it just comes down to your diet and
yeah, it does.
And I heard a quote, I think it was from a guy named Baxter, who's a friend over in the UK, and he said, it's not necessarily you are what you eat, but it's what you are what you can absorb.
Yeah.
I think that is a very undervalued conversation to have. It's like, well, you can eat whatever under the sun, but what can we actually absorb? And a lot of that happens in the gut. And we have to look at, like, okay, well, are we eating whole foods that we're actually able to, take on
absorb it? That's a really good point. And I feel like I should sort of go back to what I said earlier about what does affect your gut. A good example is my mum was on PPIs for gastro reflux. She had reflux. She was on a medication for 20 years, and she had to get surgery because she wasn't able to absorb magnesium, and had troubles absorbing sodium and a bunch of vitamins and minerals that were really important. So she had a bunch of deficiencies. So no matter how good she was eating, she wasn't able to absorb it, because that affected her gut's ability to absorb the proton pumps, to absorb things like magnesium, calcium, all that. So no matter what she ate, she couldn't have outrun the fact that she can't absorb it.
Yeah. So how do you pick up on things like that though? Like, how does the average person, if they're unsure, is it just oh, it's not working, go see a health professional? Is that?
It can be hard. Like, I guess, for example, my mum kind of got like told, oh no, you're fine. And I think it just like getting blood tests can definitely help. I try and get them regularly because I used to have a bit of an iron deficiency. I don't eat a whole lot of red meat as it is, so I take an iron supplement, but I think they can be really useful in just being like, okay, you feel really lethargic and tired all the time. A few years ago I had a B12 deficiency, and that's what it came down to. So it can be hard because, you know, doctors don't always listen. Sometimes it's best to be like, hey, this is exactly what's going on. I think I should maybe, you know, if you are really struggling with gut health and being like, I feel like I'm not being taken seriously, ask for a referral to a gastroenterologist or something, or ask to get your blood test done or something like that, where you feel like you can sort of get to the bottom of what may be going on. But it can be hard to pick up on, because I feel like sometimes when we're sick or we're experiencing something, we will kind of make up excuses for it in our head. But on the other end, I do feel like sometimes some people will over exaggerate what's happening. So it's a fine line to sort of balance between, is something wrong, or am I over exaggerated, or is something wrong and I'm covering it up, so to speak.
And I guess that was sort of the point that you made earlier as well, is it's like, if you've having gut issues for a short period of time is probably not a huge red flag, unless you're bleeding out of your bum hole. Like that's like but if it's just a short period of time, just see how it goes. But if it's continuing for like, maybe what would you say, if it's a 2 to 3 week thing, or would you say?
I think so. And I think, or even if it's not a 2 to 3 week constant thing, but if it's like a 3 times a week for a longer period of time sort of thing, it's that when it's like, actually, let me look at my diet. Maybe I'm eating something that's upset with me. Maybe I can try that. But if it keeps going, I think it's like, oh, is my fiber really good? Okay, then I don't understand what the issue is. Then that's probably when it's time to go see someone about it.
That's a really good point. And I think you're having like, you don't necessarily have to have a coach that specializes in everything, but what is helpful about having someone is they've got that external lens to ask you those questions. What is your fiber intake like? Have you been sleeping well at night? Are you drinking enough water? Like all of these basic lifestyle habits that, if we do want to better our health and in the long term better our gut health, then it comes back down to lifestyle decisions.
Yeah,
100%. And I think just having the self-awareness to have that conversation, to be like, all right, my guts haven't been good for 2 weeks, but I also have been drinking every weekend. I'm, you know, doing all of these things I've done. You probably don't need to see a GP, or you don't need to go see a naturopath or like go get your greens powder. It's probably just fixing up the basics.
Exactly. Yeah. And I find that's with a lot of people. Well, I've had a few clients be like, oh, I'm struggling. I'm like, okay, you had KFC the other night and you went out drinking 3 times this week. So I wouldn't be stressed. I think it's eating food you're not used to, eating food that causes bloating, eating food you know that you don't react well to, or, you know, drinking regularly. It's like one of those things where you can take the loss and just deal with it, or you can sort of stop or reduce those behaviors.
It's like you can suck it up and just keep partying your life away, or like you can actually have, you know, a better general health life, and enjoy your body a little bit more. And that's another good point, is I want to touch a little bit more on alcohol, and like, would you say there is a certain amount that is safe? Like, what would you say that the ballpark is, or is it just more of a don't go on a binge every weekend for months on end?
So I did try and look into it, and there's no, you know, exact number of this is how many drinks you can have and you won't upset your gut, because alcohol is ethanol is poison to humans. It's obviously going to have an effect on everything in our gut. It affects our gut because it just inflames our intestines, and it can just lead to, you know, obviously people after they've had a big weekend of drinking, they obviously don't feel good in the gut, they feel hungover, a bunch of things. It can disrupt our immune system through the gut, all kinds of things, but there's no necessarily, you know, number of have this many standard drinks. But I think it probably comes back to, you know, the guidance of not having more than 10 standard drinks a week sort of thing. Comes down to the basics of, you know, this don't go above this upper limit. But that being said, there have been a few studies that looked into red wine and other fermented alcohol.
Oh wow, yeah.
Small amounts of that can actually have a good effect on the gut, because they contain good bacteria, which was really interesting. Because I've read
liking red wine, then aren't I?
Just start drinking red wine, you'll be fine.
All right, guys.
And there were a few other fermented Asian drinks that I can't remember the name of off the top of my head, but a few studies were done on, and they found that it actually made the gut microbiome more diverse because it used new bacteria. So it's a little bit funny like that, but not all fermented drinks necessarily are great for the gut. Like beer isn't really great for the gut, but there's no amount. I feel like if you might know what your limit is. Like if you go out for Friday and you have 3 drinks and like maybe your tummy's a little bit upset the next day, but after that it's fine, then that would be fine. But if you find that you're having more than that and your gut's really not reacting to it, you're like, it's one of those things you either have to suck it up or just keep going.
And coming back again, I think it's like what happens most of the time when we drink alcohol, it's a ripple effect. It's a domino effect into other habits. Like you're gonna go get Macca's at 12 o'clock at night. Have a late night. You're probably not gonna eat the best the next day. You're not gonna sleep well for the next week. So it's like
exactly. And I think all those things have an impact. So on everything.
So to wrap things up a little bit, I want to ask 2 more questions, or one and a bit more of a yes and no question. What is your biggest ick when it comes to social media and gut health? And it could be something that we've already touched base on, but would you say the biggest ick that you have?
I didn't even think about this question before, but now I'm like, oh, there's a few. I think it's like I follow a few, or I don't follow them, but I know of a few people who really promote greens powders as like healing their gut, all that kind of thing. And then you see them twice a week binge drinking on the weekends, getting Macca's, and then it's back to promoting the greens powders. And I think that is a little bit of an ironic thing where they're just, greens powders, oh my God, my gut's been so good. And then they'll go and have a totally opposite lifestyle of drinking. And I think it's also a bit of an ick but this is just me personally, when people do really try and talk about the gut microbiota, and in doing so, they may have used ChatGPT or something, or they don't know what they're talking about, and so they make really bad errors which can be interpreted in the wrong way as well. So those would be my ick, but I really do think my ick is probably greens powders in general. Just they're not your saving grace for your gut.
Right. I won't start promoting anytime soon. Not that I was going to. But it's funny that you said even to ChatGPT side of things when it comes to protocols and stuff like that. Like on Instagram lately, I've been getting just random ads for, as a coach, downloadable templates of
So have I.
meal plans of like, you don't have to, meal plan for gut health for your clients. Here's just a generic, and I'm like, what on earth is going to be in it? Like, it's just like, it's a gimmick. It's a money-making scheme.
I've had the same things recommended to me, and quite often as well, different companies, and I don't like them because a coach can take that, rebrand it, whatever, for $29.99. But then if their client asks them a question and they don't know, then that's just it's just not fair. Like it's a bit lazy. Like I think it's one of those things where it's just like stick to what you know and do good at it, and you'll be fine as a coach.
And it comes back down to as well, like for me, I'm not a qualified, gut microbiologist or anything like that. And but I know that if your lifestyle decisions are healthy, it's going to have a ripple effect. And if it doesn't, then it's time to refer out.
Absolutely.
It's more of that sort of process and protocols. But these sort of, generic templates just made me laugh. I'm like, so sad.
And even I have a client I had to refer out because the gut problems were just outside my scope. Like I can help you with the basics, but like if something's wrong, you've got to go get tests, then you've got to go get tests.
It's like as a exercise professional, if you've got a broken leg, you probably can't. I'm like, all right, 10 sets of squats going to help you with that.
Exactly.
Before I get into this last topic, I do want to touch base quickly on environmental factors a little bit more. Does things like weather, like actually outside, do you know much about like whether the weather changes going through different seasons? Would that have a bit of an effect on our gut health?
I think the only thing I can think of in terms of like weather, temperature, blah, 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 is if you're sweating a lot and you're not replenishing the water that you've just lost, then that can have an effect on the gut, the composition of your stool. If you're having a bunch of fiber, or if you're having a bunch of sodium or creatine, for example, and you're not absorbing water to help bind with that, then you're probably going to have some upset gut issues. But in terms of weather, not necessarily. Geography, where you live in the world, what the traditional diet is, plays a really large role on your gut health, because your gut health is, some people say it starts when you're in the womb, and some people say it starts as soon as you birthed into the world and you're full of microbes all of a sudden. But where you live definitely has an effect. Weather, not. If you're hydrating properly, I don't necessarily think that's an issue.
No, that's interesting. I was just thinking more about like body temperature and having to regulate different environments, and whether that would, but like what you said, it's all down to that's hydration and just
it is.
If you're sweating your balls off, you just need to stay hydrated. So I'm going to talk this last little point that I want to make. I'm going to chuck out a couple of different just trending things to see if you would say that it's beneficial for our gut health or not beneficial for our gut health. Lemon water. I know it's going to be like it depends discussion.
No, I actually just straight up don't know. I'm just going to say quickly, because I can't answer this, there used to be a trend of that it would make your body alkaline because it's acidic. That doesn't happen. That's not a thing. Your body neutralizes everything. I'm going to say, I don't want to say it's like not beneficial, but it's like, it's neutral. I don't think it does anything to your gut health.
and that's the type of like what I think, and obviously I'm not a microbiologist, but like if it's helping you drink more water,
then absolutely,
because water is going to be beneficial to your gut.
But for me, I don't like lemon water, so I'd be inclined to not drink as much.
Where like the trend of like lemon water with a touch of apple cider vinegar and like and all this like magic potion, it's probably just like a thing of look at my reel and like it and give me you're like, this is actually going to make a beneficial be beneficial for your gut health. We know what you're going to say with greens powder, so we don't need to get back into that. What about, I can't even remember what they're called, but the little probiotics,
Yakults.
What
they're good. They're good. I like them.
I'm gonna write that.
Get them.
Well, that's good, team. Write that one down. Yakult. Yogurt.
If you don't have any dairy intolerance or anything, then, and you're not vegan or whatever, then absolutely, they contain lots of lactobacillus, and sometimes they sometimes they have other bacteria added, but bifidobacterium as well, generally pretty good to have as a probiotic supplement.
Cool. All right, team. Yogurt.
Write
that down. Lemon water if you're going to drink more water. Leave the greens powders. Kombucha.
No.
So
I had this discussion with, it's not necessarily no, but it's like maybe. So I had this discussion with some colleagues quite a few months ago now. One of my colleagues who studies yeast, she's immunocompromised, and I don't know how the topic of kombucha came up. I think she was studying something that had to do with it. She can't drink kombucha because she's immunocompromised. So the issue with that is that if you have the issue with it is a lot of how kombucha is made is not well regulated, and they have done a bunch of tests where they found there's a lot of bad pathogenic bacteria in the kombucha, because it's not very well regulated, right? It's fermented drink, but as far as regulating it goes, especially if it's not refrigerated, and how everything like that happens, it's just actually not worth it if you're got a bad immune system or you're prone to getting sick or anything like that. So it's one of those things where I just hate the taste of it, and I think if you hate the taste of it, don't bother with it. But generally it's probably okay if you're not prone to getting sick, if you're not like in an extended period of deficit, or you don't have any other things that could potentially mean that you're more likely to get sick. But I feel like everyone really talks about it, but in reality it's just a carbonated beverage with some bacteria.
Just have a Coke. Like just have a Coke Zero. Like surely that tastes better. But that brings me into the
Yeah.
next one is artificial sweeteners, and I've got one of these just sitting here. I'm just gonna crack it open.
I'm a sucker for them. I love them. I love aspartame. So some sugar
Yeah.
alcohols and artificial sweeteners will not go well with your gut. For example, I can't have the Monster energy drinks that don't have sugar. Even though I love them, I can't have them because I like almost immediately bloat and I don't get.
Oh, we've lost you.
Has a few artificial sugars in it, but I find that it's a little bit different for everyone and what they react to. It's really
Very person dependent.
Yeah, it is. It's a process of elimination. I'm not sure if it is xylitol or erythritol. I'm not actually even sure how that's pronounced. I just don't react. Whereas stevia and aspartame I'm fine with. There probably just needs to be more studies done on it, but it really is.
Am I breaking up or are you breaking up? Can anyone hear me or see me, or is it just Kai that we've lost? If you can pop down in the chat who you can hear. Maybe it's me. Just Kai. So what we've gotten out of that team is she doesn't like kombucha, so don't drink that. But yeah, I have that same sort of opinion. And again, I'm very much learning a lot today, as you guys are. Artificial sweeteners. I love a good Coke Zero or Pepsi Max. Let's see if she comes.
Am I back?
Yes, you are back.
Sorry, my internet just dropped out. I'm not sure what happened there.
No, you're fine. I was just saying that, like, I love good Coke Zero or Pepsi Max, but if I have, say, like, I think it's like Splendor or something, like sometimes that doesn't sit well with me. But
I've actually found the same. Yeah.
There's certain ones that just, it's not like artificial sweeteners is the one thing. There's so many different variations of artificial sweeteners.
And what they're mixed with and in what quantities you're consuming them in. It really is like a process of, let's see if this works. If I feel fine after it, like I can have lots of Diet Coke and Sprite Zero and be fine. But if I have a Monster energy drink, not sitting well.
It's like anything, a process of elimination is
it is.
If it's going to upset you, then maybe don't have much of it, or have it and just reap the consequences.
Yeah, exactly.
Kimchi.
Love it. Personally, love it. I got a question a while ago about shelf-stable kimchi and refrigerated kimchi. Pretty much always go for refrigerated kimchi, or if you are going to have kombucha, refrigerated kombucha, as opposed to the shelf-stable one. The shelf-stable ones are pasteurized, so don't bother. It just means they're not going to have any of the probiotics. It's just going to be some fermented.
Good to know. I've been downing it.
I absolutely love it. Like I would eat it every day. I actually was going to go buy some today, but absolutely recommend.
The so sad thing is, though, I was looking at the refrigerated ones at Woolworths and it's like $10, and the shelf ones is like $3.
Oh yeah, you need to go to the Asian store. They're like so much cheaper. Yeah, and they're so much better.
All right, and kimchi and sauerkraut, are they quite similar?
Yeah. So I don't like sauerkraut that much, so I just have kimchi. But it's really, if you like something and you want to eat it often, go with that. But it's not like you might get more benefits over having both because it might be different variety of bacteria, but I'm not sure how much it actually differs between the two.
It's just pretty much fermented vegetables, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to put them under the same roof.
I don't mind both of them. But I'll remember that I'm going to go to the Asian stores and get their stuff.
It's cheaper and it's better.
All right, I will be doing that. Bone broth.
No comment. Actually, it's one of those things I don't know enough about. I've not read enough about to determine whether it's good. I feel like a lot of people do it. It's a little bit icky to me. I don't want to say it's gross, but like
the effort?
Maybe I actually don't know enough about bone broth to say whether it's necessarily good for gut health. I think it does have a lot of benefits. In terms of gut health, I actually don't know.
Yeah, I just think it'd be effort. I don't know anything about actually making bone broth or like going through the process, but my dog will enjoy it. L-glutamine.
No, no, if you're already getting enough of it in your diet, which you should be, if you're having complete proteins, don't bother. Don't. It's like greens powder, don't waste the money. I feel like there's also not enough studies on it to necessarily show that this is really good for gut health beyond anecdotal experience.
Wow. Okay, that's really good to know. Oh, there was another one that I just thought of that I forgot. Apple cider vinegar.
I got asked about it the other day, but not in the context of gut health. So I'm going to say, like, if you really love it, yes, but it's also one of those things where you need to take it consistently and in the recommended dosage to reap the benefits of it. Personally, I just think it's nasty. I don't know, it became a thing a while ago to take a shot, but it's once again one of those things where if you like it, take it. It's not doing any harm, but it's also not saving your gut. Like, I think it definitely has health benefits, but not as much as what a lot of people claim. But in terms of gut health, I'm not actually sure how much it affects the gut or benefits it.
And the last one I have here, which I'm interested to know, is bicarb soda.
Oh, good one, because I know bicarb soda is on the ISSN's list of recommended supplements because they're effective and safe. But in terms of gut health, I actually don't know. So I've got another, I'm not sure.
Yeah, wow.
I'll let you know in like an hour after this call.
Yeah, you've got some homework you'll go away with, won't you? It's funny that you say those things about glutamine and even apple cider vinegar. And I think for me, because I do take both and bicarb soda, and I have been for 5 years, so it's more of a now it's a habit rather than
and that's I don't think there's any negatives to it. If you're enjoying it and you feel like you're getting a benefit, that's great.
Yeah, I just think I would notice if I didn't take it. That's the thing. I don't necessarily think I'm noticing any health benefits. I just think that if I start taking it, it might have a ripple effect and the cracks in earth.
Yeah, everything's gonna. I haven't. My creatine only arrived today. I didn't have it for 4 days. So I'm like, I'm so weak. I'm gonna
lose all this strength.
Lose all my progress. Yeah.
Well, Kai, that is all I had to talk about. If anyone has any questions while I've still got Kai on the call, feel free to unmute or pop a question in the chat. If you have a question specifically to something that you are currently doing for your gut health, feel free to ask. I'm sure Kai wouldn't mind. But if you all aren't jumping at once, I'm guessing you aren't going to. So thank you so much again, Kai, for joining me today for the first episode of the Growth Mindset series. It was really fun. Like, I really enjoyed it.
It was really good. Just for everyone to know, I currently have a free guide to gut health on my website. So I think Jo has my Instagram linked on her Instagram. But I have just head to my website, I have a free, which does really just cover a lot of what we spoke about today. So I will, and if you have any questions afterwards, feel free to message me. I'm always happy to.
And I've had a read over that document as well. Yeah, that's a good one.
I think it would depend what the pre-workout contains. Caffeine, I don't think has any effect on the gut necessarily. If the pre-workout contains sweetener, it's hard because pre-workouts often contain a lot of ingredients. It contains sometimes beta-alanine, taurine, artificial sweeteners. In terms of just generally pre-workout, I don't think so. If it has artificial sweeteners and you're having it every day and maybe the artificial sweeteners don't sit well with you, maybe. But I don't think in general most of the traditional ingredients are bad to the gut.
I think it's that process of elimination. Like, you'll probably be able to find one if you enjoy taking pre-workout that will sit well with you. Yeah,
I think so too. But it's hard to tell because, like, I don't know, one of the ones I'm taking now, I think I'm taking the Nexus Sport Nutrition one, which I love, but it has a lot of ingredients. So it can be hard to be like, okay, if I'm having, and I'm loving it, but if I'm having issues with my gut, there are like a lot of ingredients, and it's like that for a lot of pre-workouts. So it's hard to say whether pre-workout in general has necessarily an effect on the gut. But
that's an interesting one. But to leave you with this as well, guys, it's like that with anything. Like, if something has lots and lots and lots of ingredients in it, like whether it's high processed foods,
it's gonna be hard to know exactly what's gonna upset us. And that's like with everything. It could be regardless of gut health, it's any sort of health metric. It's if something's highly processed foods, it's gonna be hard to pinpoint if it's actually gonna be bad for us or not. And I'm guessing, yeah, you'd probably agree with that. So like the whole of the food, the better it is going to be for us. And the more we can go through that eliminating process.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
like, yeah, for me, like what's a good example? Actually, I don't really have a good example. Broccoli. I can't have too much of it. Makes me fart. Too much information.
That's a really
yeah.
common one. Broccoli, sometimes beans for people as well. Like that's pretty common. Asparagus. So people that have any sort of IBS, and I think maybe Crohn's disease as well, they just can't digest it very well. And for a lot of people, it does cause that bloating, farting, gastrointestinal distress. So it's actually advised not to have it. But it is one of those things where it could be just the broccoli that eating every day might make you a little bit bloated.
And that's what I've found as well. Like small doses, fine. But like every now and again, it's just
and it's like when you think about recovering from food poisoning, having traveler's diarrhea or whatever, you're not going into eating, you're not just feeling like eating a massive meal of the stuff you usually eat. You usually start with that easy digestible crackers and salt and, you know, like the real basics of what you need to your gut can digest as well. So I think that's an important thing to note.
It's very, very interesting. Again, thank you so much, Kai, for joining me. I learned a lot, and I hope everyone else got a lot out of it. The next episode will be out hopefully next month. I've already got someone in the works that I would love to interview, so I will drop that probably maybe next week. But yeah, happy Friday, happy weekend. Hope everyone enjoys the next couple of days, whatever you're doing. Stay out of the heat. And yeah, if you want to leave us with anything, Kai?
No, just have a great day. If you have any questions that you think of later or didn't want to ask, just send me a DM. I'll be happy to answer them. Yeah, I think that's it. Just have a really good weekend. Look after your gut.
Yes. Happy, healthy guts. Thanks, guys.
See ya.